The story begins far, far away from Earth. In a dark corner of the universe, the perfect stage is set for something impossible to happen in absolute secrecy. Suddenly, the piece of this cosmic void is torn apart. A colossal structure simply materializes out of nowhere, trapping whoever is inside in an incomprehensible space nightmare. The scale of the abduction is absurd. The planet's greatest heroes realize they've been ripped from their lives and caged together. The tension is palpable, and everyone feels they have been gathered like pieces on a chessboard. But the true terror reveals itself right next door. A second ship harbors a presence so hostile it shocks the telepaths. The mysterious abductor didn't just bring Earth's defenders, but also the universe's greatest threats. And it doesn't take long for the internal ticking time bomb to explode. The heroes' fragile alliance crumbles when they discover the planet's greatest extremist has been placed among them. They are ready to kill each other before even facing the villains. The accused mutant doesn't back down an inch. He justifies all the blood he spilled as a righteous war for the survival of his species, turning the tables on the false moralists. Chaos begins to ensue internally. The argument is cut short when the abductor's true scale of power is displayed outside. An entire galaxy is summarily erased from existence, proving they are dealing with a force of incomprehensible magnitude. Immediately after the destruction, the entity begins forging a completely new world from scratch. Piecing together the remains of the universe, the ultimate battlefield is taking shape right before everyone's eyes. Meanwhile, on the villain's ship, all control is lost. A killer robot awakens disoriented and adopts its most basic directive, the immediate eradication of any life form in the room. Realizing that brute force isn't enough, Dr. Doom corners Molecule Man. The problem is that the man with the power to save them is in an absolute panic, begging to hide from the chaos. Pressured, Molecule Man decides to use his powers, but chooses the way out that least compromises his new morals. He simply alters physics and launches the rampaging machine towards the largest cosmic being in the room. The robotic attack is treated as a mere insult by the deity. With minimal effort, the Devourer of Worlds neutralizes the machine's nuclear reactor, destroying it completely in less than a second. It is then that the one responsible for all this tears the fabric of reality and manifests himself. The entity radiates an overwhelming power that terrifies everyone, showing that he transcends all comprehension. Calling himself the Beyonder, he makes an offer that changes the rules of the game. The promise is clear: destroy your enemies and receive the fulfillment of any imaginable desire as a reward. Blinded by the chance to cure his eternal hunger, Galactus ignores the survival tournament. The cosmic giant charges with full force, confronting the entity directly to force an end to his age-old torment. Seizing the distraction, Dr. Doom sees his grand opportunity. Certain that such absolute power should belong to him, the villain breaches the security and goes after the deity to usurp its secrets. But such audacity comes at a high price. The entity reacts with crushing fury, generating a cataclysmic shockwave that overloads Doom's systems and proves that human genius means nothing against absolute power. With the access route sealed, the containment bases are dispatched directly to the surface of that patchwork planet. The two groups are separated, setting the perfect stage for the imminent war. On alien soil, hostilities among the heroes explode once again. The presence of the mutant extremist sparks a heavy moral debate, with him accusing Earth's defenders of being complicit in the oppression against his race. With pure disdain for the Avengers' impulsiveness and aggression, the Master of Magnetism refuses the useless confrontation. He leaves the area alone, leaving that fragile alliance behind. Without clear leadership in hostile territory, the current leader of the Avengers understands the cosmic gravity of the situation. She abdicates her authority, pointing out that the group urgently needs an absolute symbol of order. The God of Thunder himself intervenes, offering respect and total submission to a mortal human. This overwhelming validation silences any objections and consolidates Captain America's unquestionable leadership. Confronting the criminals in their respective base, Dr. Doom tries to knock some sense into the group. He demands that they stop salivating over a banal trophy and focus on understanding the true magnitude of the force that imprisoned them. But the henchmen interpret this superior vision as pure cowardice. Thinking Doom has lost his edge, the criminals rebel and decide to resolve their frustration by eliminating their false leader. Wasting no time on arguments, Doom delivers a violent reprimand. A brutal release of energy sweeps the insubordinates away, purging that bunch of limited criminals from his path once and for all. Realizing that his peers have failed miserably, he decides to seek out the only mind capable of rivaling his own. Swallowing his ego, Doom sets off in an alien transport towards the hero's camp. But King the Conqueror does not accept this desertion passively. To punish the treason, the time traveler readies a recently discovered alien arsenal, putting the fugitive right in his crosshairs. A blast of massive power crosses the sky and annihilates Doom's transport in mid-air. The insubordination seems definitively resolved with this devastating explosion. The roar of the impact attracts the heroes, who find Dr. Doom miraculously alive in the rubble. Dragging himself through the dust, he frantically calls out for his greatest rival, deeming him the only one fit to understand his plans. While the feral mutant sees an opportunity to execute the vulnerable villain, the newly appointed leader blocks the attempt. The instinct to help a wounded man wins out, and the captain imposes his authority. However, Victor Von Doom's pride harshly rejects any charity. Disgusted by the hero's compassion, he concludes that they lack the necessary ruthlessness to steal a god's power, and turns his back on the alliance. And as soon as the villain walks away, the real war breaks out. Seduced by the Beyonder's promise, the criminal faction launches a coordinated attack against the heroes, turning the tournament into an all-out bloodbath. The sudden attack forces the heroes into survival mode. Barking orders, the leadership tries to organize a defensive line before the team is overrun by the ambush, but the disadvantage is colossal. The criminals wield alien weapons of mass destruction, instantly shattering any attempt at a defensive formation in an absolute massacre. Despite the overwhelming firepower, combat experience makes the difference. Realizing that the enemies are acting on pure chaotic instinct, the leadership focuses on a surgical counterattack to disarm the artillery. Suddenly, the mysterious entity who orchestrated the abduction dictates the rules of the game. It's a sick proposal, an absolute fight for survival, where the prize is having literally any wish granted. But the Devourer of Worlds refuses to be a pawn on the board and attacks the creator deity right at the source, followed by the calculating Doom. The catch is that the power gap is brutal, and the retaliation is immediate. The cosmic beatdown serves as a reality check for Victor. He argues with the other criminals that the real prize isn't defeating rivals, but rather figuring out how to steal this superior entity's power. Seeking allies of his caliber, he tries to negotiate with the Devourer but receives the most crushing silence possible. To a force of that magnitude, Victor's genius is completely ignored, leaving behind a profound sense of insignificance. Subservient to no one, he makes his decision. While heroes and criminals waste time playing the little game imposed by the rules, Victor refuses to be a pawn and sets out to forge his own path. The first step requires resources. He heads straight for the forward base assigned to the criminal faction, knowing that the technology inside must be exploited for his plan. After dealing with the defenses, a surgical strike on the server core solves the problem for good. With the central system neutralized, the entire fortress, its weapons, and its secrets instantly change hands. Walking through the corridors, he finds the husk of a lethal artificial intelligence. Where others saw scrap metal, he sees a perfect executioner and decides to reactivate the machine as his personal bodyguard. Meanwhile, the heroes combine their skills on the battlefield. The total destruction of the alien technology permanently shuts down the offensive capability of the criminal shock squad. Searching for a safe base from the air, a disturbing realization comes to light. They notice that the planet's very atmosphere was meticulously designed by the entity to encourage constant combat. After the chaos, the heroes finally find a ready-made tactical shelter in the middle of nowhere. The mere existence of this place reinforces that they are in an arena tailor-made for slaughter. At the general briefing, the team gets a harsh dose of reality. Winning an initial skirmish means nothing, as the elite of the worst tyrants and cosmic entities are still alive and scheming on this very planet. Far away, the criminal faction reaches the brink of exhaustion. The group's only hope is to return to their old hideout to rest and come up with a new survival strategy. But that hope crumbles the instant they arrive, seeing that Doom has usurped the place. Believing he had been subjugated earlier, the group underestimates him and issues an ultimatum to take back control. The gang's arrogance is crushed in a single instant of violence. Without lifting a finger, Doom proves that the entire base and its firepower now respond solely to his commands. Inside the facility, Doom shows why he is a master of manipulation. He offers VIP treatment specifically to the member with the most absurd power level on the team, focusing on keeping him completely loyal to his command. Taking advantage of the darkness, the Master of Magnetism decides to act on his own. He separates from the group he was placed in and makes a tactical approach to slip unnoticed into the enemy base. The stealthy exploration achieves its goal by mapping the facility's vital core. With direct access to the base's power source, the perfect opportunity for sabotage presents itself. Inside the base, the leadership suffers a pure emotional breakdown. The despair becomes clear when the brains of the team admits how much the absence of his family and the cosmic isolation are tearing him apart inside. While the heroes drown in personal dilemmas, the enemy acts in the shadows. Magneto manipulates the base's main power source with cold calculation to forge an imminent disaster. The maximum emergency protocol blares across the base. The distress signal snaps everyone out of their depressive paralysis, directing the entire contingent to the point of sabotage exactly as the enemy planned. With his plan exposed, Magneto uses the base's own machinery as a weapon. He tries to bury the entire team all at once to secure a safe escape route. Realizing he's being pursued mid-flight, he converts metallic debris into a lethal trap, neutralizing the team's fast front line without even needing to stop. With a hostage in play, the dynamic of the fight changes, as the makeshift prison limits the villain's speed. It's the perfect opening for the heroes to try and intercept him through sheer force of impact before he vanishes. The mid-air collision generates a bizarre disturbance. The side effect of the alien world's properties instantly reverses the physical mutation of one of the heroes, completely paralyzing the fight's sense of urgency. The distraction costs them dearly, and they realize the abducted teammate has vanished from sight. The situation drastically worsens when they notice that an entire group of supposed allies hasn't lifted a finger to help in the attack, planting the seed of betrayal. But the plan to rescue the hostage dies right there, forcing the leadership to abort the pursuit. Scanners detect colossal movement outside. A devastating threat is about to knock on the base's door, forcing the fractured team into immediate survival mode. The arena planet shows no mercy, and a brutal storm swallows everything in its path. The alien fortress withstands the impact, providing perfect isolation. But the true danger doesn't come from nature, but from who's already inside. Pleased with the weather advantage, Magneto decides it's time to deal with the loose end he brought along. The master of magnetism turns his attention to the hostage he snatched from the Avengers base. Without warning, the crushing pressure of the metallic confinement abruptly gives way. The makeshift prison opens, ending the victim's suffocating torture. Instead of panic, the Wasp feels pure outrage. She shrinks down, reverses her scale, and makes a bold decision. She's going to hunt down the mutant and demand answers face to face. Wasting no time on small talk, the heroine attacks. The strike lands a direct hit, shattering the aura of invincibility Magneto tried to project, and forcing the villain to take the situation seriously. It becomes clear he doesn't just want a truce. Magneto has a clear objective and tries to seduce the Wasp's mind, seeking to bring her over to his side of the war through pure charm and calculated manipulation. Far away, the situation at the hero's base goes from bad to catastrophic. The storm tears off a colossal chunk of the mountain, turning it into a meteor on a direct collision course with their sanctuary. The base is milliseconds away from being crushed, but the heroes aren't going to just stand by. Thor steps up and flies out to intercept the threat head-on, betting everything on his divine heritage. The plan works perfectly. What was an absolute death sentence is reduced to airborne rubble by the God of Thunder, ensuring the sanctuary's survival. In the safety of the interior, the psychological toll of this cosmic abduction catches up with the humans. Homesickness for Earth and the deep pain of isolation begin to erode the team's morale and their will to fight. The brains of the operation is broken inside. The absurd weight of leadership collides with Reed Richards' agony over being far from his family. Mr. Fantastic proves entirely incapable of focusing on tactical planning. Trying not to lose his mind over this bizarre reality, Peter Parker decides to do what he does best: patrol. He begins exploring the hostile alien complex in an attempt to clear his head. During his patrol, Spidey spies on an isolated meeting and discovers something shocking. Professor Xavier has regained the use of his legs. Tired of the other heroes' distrust, the mutants decide to split from the main group, and Xavier drops the real bombshell. Their plan is to cross the line and officially ally with Magneto, but before Peter can process the weight of this betrayal, his mind is detected by the professor's telepathic powers. Seeing everyone there as a traitor, Spidey goes on the offensive. Being outnumbered means nothing, and the mutant team finds itself completely neutralized and overwhelmed by the hero's frantic pace and agility. With the upper hand secured, Peter escapes and rushes toward the leadership of the Fantastic Four. He is carrying the bombshell intel that will permanently permanently shatter the cosmic alliance and prevent the mutants from fleeing. But the truth is suppressed behind the scenes. Spidey's mind is forcibly invaded and rewritten by Xavier. It is a massive moral violation, accepted by the mutant leadership as a necessary evil to secure their escape. The official split is complete. Ignoring the weather risks, the mutant leader hacks into an alien ship and sets a direct course for the enemy's lair. The X-Men abandon the Avengers. The irony is that at the exact moment the X-Men are risking everything, Magneto himself is actively rejecting partnerships. His inflated ego speaks louder and he tells Dr. Doom he doesn't need him to win. Dismissing Doom, Magneto focuses on his hostage. Overwhelmed by the situation, the isolation, and meticulous manipulation, the Avenger Wasp succumbs to Magneto's seduction, compromising her loyalty. On the other side of the planet, the focus shifts back to the one who truly wants to control it all. Dr. Doom has firmly established himself as the absolute master of his new base, driven purely by strategy and power. Since Magneto rejected the Alliance, Doom decides to forge his own army. He finds two ordinary human women and chooses to use them as guinea pigs for his twisted new experiment. Human biology withstands the alien radiation. The first test subject wakes up ecstatic about her newfound strength, adopts the name Titania, and stands ready to serve the commands of her creator. The second subject is transformed into a living thermal power plant. Fascinated by her own destructive capacity, she tests her limits by annihilating the surrounding structure and adopts the codename Volcana. With his army assembled and the pieces on the board, the villain decrees that the waiting is over. Tactical preparation becomes the priority, and the massive assault on the hero's base is scheduled to begin. And Doom's greatest weapon is revealed. Molecule Man's blind loyalty to Dr. Doom is so absolute that he is willing to literally tear the entire planet apart if that is the condition for winning the war. Day breaks, and the storm that served as their shield finally subsides. Captain America wakes up in a panic, realizing they have lost control of the situation and are now sitting ducks. Desperation mounts during the emergency. Bruce Banner's mind nearly blacks out and the Savage Hulk resurfaces, rejecting any orders and threatening the team's own leader at the worst possible moment. Outside, the punishment for their lapse in security arrives fast. Dr. Doom brings the full force of his army right to the hero's doorstep with clear orders to crush the fortress without mercy. The initial attack is absolute and devastating. The sanctuary's security turns to dust in a millisecond as the invasion breaches the base's structure, forcing the heroes to fight for their very survival. Inside the crumbling base, Reed Richards has to make a painful decision. He is forced to leave Ben Grimm behind, since in his ordinary human form, he has become an unacceptable liability in a war zone. The invasion spreads, leaving no time to react. The newcomer Volcana unleashes all her newly acquired power in a brutal attack against She-Hulk, desperate to prove her worth by crushing the heroine. In another wing, the danger advances silently and lethally. The invaders split up, and a trap snaps shut behind Captain Marvel in her moment of greatest distraction. The chaos finally becomes known to everyone. Spider-Man swings through the corridors, alerting his allies, catching Iron Man by surprise in the middle of his preparations. The warning has been given: fight or die. The leadership realizes that the current battle is already lost. The captain's order is clear and direct: retreat, accept the temporary defeat, and regroup in a safe location before the entire team gets slaughtered. The final outcome is assessed by the invading faction. Despite their frustration over the lack of casualties on the enemy side, their objective has been completed. The sentence is handed down: the hero's sanctuary will be wiped off the map, marking an absolute humiliation. The attack ordered by Doom is executed to perfection. The hero's safe haven is reduced to smoking rubble. Without a base and severely injured, their situation goes from critical to desperate. With the territory secured, the villain squad takes control and begins their sweep. It is no longer a simple battle, it's a ruthless hunt to exterminate any surviving resistance. The newly transformed Titania makes a point of proving her worth to the group. Her physical display of brute strength shocks even the veterans, establishing her place as a relentless monster. This brute strength results in a lethal aerial bombardment. The fleeing heroes, already on the brink of exhaustion, are targeted by a relentless shower of debris without warning. To ensure annihilation, Molecule Man decides to escalate the attack. He plans to crush the survivors all at once under billions of tons of solid rock. Leaving no room for error, he uses his absurd power to rip an entire mountain range from the ground. It's a display of power that leaves a colossal death sentence hanging over the heroes. Gravity takes its toll and the impact is apocalyptic. Millions of tons of solid rock bury the battlefield, swallowing the entire squad beneath the earth. Far away from all this chaos, Enchantress tries a different approach. Ignoring the war outside, she uses her charm to try and seduce and bend the god of thunder to her will. Thor's warrior instinct speaks louder, and the romance dies on the spot. Feeling the strong seismic tremor from the mountain's impact, he realizes a catastrophic event has just struck his allies. Thor flies straight to ground zero and lands in a scene of devastation. The fortress has been reduced to dust, and he drops right into the middle of the siege formed by Doom's squad. Doom throws the brutal reality in the Asgardians' face. He confirms the total burial of the resistance beneath the mountain range, and offers a cold ultimatum: surrender or massacre. Realizing the suicidal path Thor has chosen by refusing to surrender, Enchantress abandons him. She quickly severs any loyalty and flees, refusing to die alongside him. Thor's grief turns into pure combat fury. Embracing the absolute disadvantage, he charges in alone and forces the entire army of villains to fight for their lives. The reclamation of control is absolute. It becomes clear that sheer numbers mean nothing against an enraged deity, and the villainous group's efforts easily crumble. But Dr. Doom was just waiting for the right moment. He triggers a lethal technological trap, designed specifically to unravel the threads of the hero's divine reality. The impact leaves no room for reaction. The obliteration trap strikes the Asgardian with sudden, overwhelming force, decreeing what appears to be the warrior's abrupt end. With their supposed victory, the villain's high command settles their internal affairs. A traitor is exposed, and Ultron's loyalty is called upon to act as the absolute executioner for a defenseless execution. Meanwhile, operating completely off the radar of the main war, the X-Men cruise the skies. The Splinter Group travels aboard their ship, trying to understand the rules of this fragmented planet. The group's strategy is risky. Seek an alliance with Magneto. They dive headfirst into the lion's den, ready to fight if diplomacy fails. But the monster they expected to face acts like a perfect gentleman. Magneto behaves like a hospitable host, disarming the visitor's tension. The wartime atmosphere gives way to an almost domestic routine. Magneto focuses his charms on Janet the Wasp, trying to seduce her into lowering her defenses completely. But the pacifist mask soon slips. Magneto reveals his true dictatorial plans to everyone, making it clear that he intends to win through the merciless extermination of his rivals. With the villain's extremism confirmed, Janet turns the tables. She reveals that their supposed romance was nothing more than espionage and decides it's time to escape. The X-Men try to intervene to maintain the mutant alliance, but Janet uses her agility and momentum to break their formation, destabilizing the entire team in a domino effect. Incapacitating the mutant team just enough to clear a path, she delivers her message. The heroine flies away, taking advantage of the perfect opening to escape safely. A furious Magneto wants to wipe the fugitive from existence, but Xavier physically blocks him. The telepath draws a non-negotiable moral line, refusing to violate Janet's mind and free will. Far from there, beneath billions of tons of rock, the heroes are still breathing. Hulk has become the central pillar holding up the impossible, supporting the colossal weight of the mountain on his back. With the air running out, intellect must take action. Reed Richards takes command and cannibalizes the squad's gear, demanding everyone else's technology to attempt one final play. Using Iron Man's armor as a base, Reed begins a delicate technological surgery. He integrates the team's disparate equipment into a single desperate rescue system. The Jade Giant's strength threatens to give out under the pressure. To keep him steady, Reed does the unthinkable and starts shouting cruel insults, attacking Banner's intelligence. The humiliation triggers an explosion of pure hatred. The promise of revenge against Reed becomes the only force keeping Hulk's muscles supporting the millions of tons. With the ceiling stabilized by fury, the invention is activated. The makeshift machine drains the group's energy and injects it all directly into Tony Stark's systems. The armor absorbs an absurd cosmic flow, pulling vital energy from everyone. The suit reaches a power level it was never designed to withstand, turning into a lethal weapon ready to fire. The concentrated energy beam tears through the rocky structure from the inside out. The unbreakable prison designed by the enemy is obliterated in an instant, freeing the heroes from their tomb. In the relief of the surface, the harsh truth comes to light. Hulk processes that Reed's offense was just a cold and calculated manipulation to awaken the fury that kept them alive. The long-awaited reunion happens. Thor explains to Captain America how he survived the villain's trap, dispelling the mystery and uniting their remaining forces once again. The group is saved, but shelterless and exhausted. Captain Marvel acknowledges the urgency of the situation and flies off at top speed to sweep the planet for supplies. During her aerial mapping, she finds a village full of alien civilians. It's shocking proof that entire populations were dragged against their will to this battle world. The village is their only alternative, but it carries a suicidal risk. It sits exactly at the foot of the immense mountain occupied by Galactus, forcing the exhausted team to camp in the shadow of absolute danger. Contrary to their initial fears, diplomacy works perfectly. The alien natives yield and welcome the group peacefully, offering a rare respite in the midst of so much hostility. A local healer begins treating the critically wounded with advanced methods. Internal damage and broken bones regenerate in record time, restoring the team's strength. But the apparent peace is violently interrupted. Without any visible trigger, Ben Grimm's regained human form collapses, reverting him back to his rocky form. The emotional pain is devastating. Destroyed by losing his humanity once again, Ben demands answers from Reed, who bitterly admits he doesn't know what caused the instant mutation. And while they deal with their internal drama, cosmic patience finally runs out. The Devourer of Worlds abandons his static inertia and begins to move, marking the start of the countdown. Panic takes hold of the scientist. Reed knows that, with this colossal entity active, no refuge or alliance matters. True, uncontrollable annihilation has just begun. Panic takes hold of the heroes. The group realizes that Galactus has finally made his move, and the scale of the threat shatters any hope. Reed Richards deeply blames himself for not anticipating this cosmic strategy. Despair hits hard as they feel completely irrelevant, and the nightmare materializes in the sky. Galactus has brought his own infrastructure straight from the other side of the universe. Summoning this gigantic base means he isn't just going to fight, he's going to consume the entire planet. The doomsday clock has started ticking. The tension affects even the native healer who took the group in. Her terror makes it clear that anyone living in this bizarre world recognizes inevitable death. The language barrier prevents any explanation, but the fear of the end is universal. The atmosphere becomes incredibly heavy, but the Human Torch's mind wanders elsewhere. Ignoring the cosmic threat outside, Johnny decides to use his gratitude for being healed to force a romantic approach. He turns the apocalypse into a backdrop for his inappropriate flirting. What he didn't expect was for her to demand a strange ritual, and the effect is immediate. The language barrier is shattered as Johnny's consciousness violently expands. He begins to understand her thoughts through a forced connection. Johnny's mind reveals to her the true scale of the danger. The healer feels absolute terror as she understands the nature of the villains who were also dragged into this nightmare. Worse still, she finally understands that the entity outside is a force willing to devour everything. Through the hero's trauma, she experiences the exact moment the game began. She hears the Beyonder's decree, promising to grant desires in exchange for carnage. Now she perfectly understands the brutal rules driving this war. Drowning in the emotional toll of this total exposure, the response is instinctive. With all mental defenses destroyed, they give in to their newfound vulnerability. In the middle of a shattered planet, this psychic fusion ends up sealing an intense and completely unexpected passion. Far away, Colossus's head is millions of miles from the Beyonder's game. Isolated at the base, the only thing consuming his mind is the safety of Kitty Pryde, left behind on Earth. But his melancholy is brutally cut short by an emergency telepathic call from Professor Xavier. The intensity of the mental impact hits the mutant like a physical punch. The situation demands immediate mobilization, with no time for tears. With the X-Men assembled, Xavier reveals the reason for his despair. He shares a vital piece of information. Galactus has summoned a colossal space structure. The Devourer of Worlds has brought out the heavy artillery, and the threat level has escalated to the absurd. Seizing on the collective hesitation, Magneto takes the reins of the situation. He begins barking military orders to prepare an escape route. At the same time, he strategically positions himself next to Xavier, trying to dominate the decision-making process. Realizing that this attitude will implode the team, Xavier decides to intervene. He takes the lead and nips Magneto's temporary control in the bud. At least for as long as the crisis lasts, the Professor is the one giving the orders here. Meanwhile, at the villain's camp, the wrecking crew decides to intimidate the vulnerable Molecule Man. His instinct is to back down, but Volcana boils with rage. She refuses to accept the humiliation and immediately stands up for her ally. Seeing Volcana being disrespected is the last straw. Molecule Man drops the victim act and throws his absurd level of cosmic power in everyone's faces. Fury takes over, and he decides to teach these bullies a definitive lesson. With a mere thought, he neutralizes the aggressor, turning the guy's clothes into an inescapable prison. It is a cold and absolute display of strength. The message has been clearly sent. The tactic works perfectly, and terror sets in. Their tough guy personas evaporate, and the worst criminals around immediately bow down. They swallow any rebellion just to ensure they keep breathing. With dominance secured, Owen shapes an exclusive escape route and leaves with Volcana. This romantic exile removes the most powerful piece from the villain's board, a massive loss for anyone relying on his raw power. Oblivious to the petty squabbles, Dr. Doom focuses on the magnitude of the approaching cosmic game. The perfect plan forms in his mind. Now it's a matter of sheer precision and timing to execute his greatest move. A terrified Enchantress tries to manipulate Doom into fleeing together. She appeals to the villain's deepest wound, promising to use her divine magic to restore his disfigured face. The promise messes deeply with the monarch's psyche, but his genius speaks louder than his vanity, knowing that such a spell would come at a high price. The emotional collapse and humiliation of the goddess mean nothing to him. Doom ruthlessly cuts the theatrics short, coldly rejecting her. Far away, Magneto and Xavier join forces in a desperate attempt to read the mind of the cosmic giant. Seeing that subtlety isn't working, Magneto lets go of his own restraints and offers his raw energy to amplify Xavier's telepathy. But the colossal mind fights back. The psychic backlash is devastating. The arrogance of trying to force entry into a god's mind results in the immediate annihilation of the mutant's entire base of operations. Reed Richards attempts the peaceful route and flies up to the giant to plead for dialogue, but the entity doesn't even consider him a threat. With a simple thought, Galactus repels the leader of the Fantastic Four like an annoying insect. In response to the hero's presence, the Devourer activates his ship in the planet's orbit. A countermeasure is deployed directly to the surface. Now, the group has to deal with a deadly security system. The automated construct lands, sweeping everything away. It activates an area of effect containment system, firing an immobilizing blast that neutralizes a massive part of the squad all at once. Despair sets in as the team tries to survive. Seizing an opening created by the team, Johnny Storm bets it all on a risky maneuver. He deduces that the internal systems are vulnerable and flies into the machine to melt its operational core from the inside out. The thermal overload causes a catastrophic failure in the extermination drone. The threat explodes and is neutralized, proving that mutual trust and quick thinking saved the group from what seemed to be the end of the line. But there's no time to breathe. The villainous forces take advantage of the hero's exhaustion and attack mercilessly. For the mercenaries, it's a golden opportunity to execute the group while they can barely stay on their feet. From afar, Dr. Doom watches the massacre. He doesn't want petty revenge. This battle merely serves to create noise and divert Galactus's attention. He coldly waits for the perfect split second to strike. On the battlefield, the tide turns when the mutants charge in with full force. Forgetting their differences, they abandon their isolation and join the defense line, attacking the enemy force as a united front. The mutant fury culminates in a devastating attack. An elemental retaliation sweeps the scenery with such magnitude that it commands silent respect, forcing an immediate pause in the brutality of the war. Realizing that their advantage has vanished with this display of power, the villain leadership falls back. Survival becomes the priority, forcing a tactical retreat choked with frustration and ending the ambush. The aftermath of the clash is terrible, and one of the heroes falls to the brink of physical collapse. The team's instinct is an immediate rescue, but a shocking overarching order from command decides that the wounded warrior will be left behind. His only chance of survival falls into the hands of the alien healer. The energy of the healing ritual invades his nervous system, draining the agonizing pain. The relief is so overwhelming that it completely shatters the warrior's psychological defenses. The true cost of this healing quickly manifests itself. The alien procedure completely rewrites the hero's emotional compass from scratch, replacing his previous feelings with an immediate and confusing obsession for the woman who saved him. As the heroes try to deal with the chaos and strategy, an absence raises a red flag. Dr. Doom was not in the battle, and the group knows he is plotting something in the shadows, possibly more dangerous than Galactus himself. And they are right. Doom has achieved the impossible and infiltrated Galactus's absolute domain. He walks through a technological environment that would crush the sanity of an ordinary mind, straight into the cosmic machinery. Refusing to be intimidated, his ascension plan crystallizes. Doom's goal isn't to survive, but to corrupt the system. He intends to siphon Galactus's essence to usurp the Beyonder himself and rewrite the universe. But his march toward godhood is abruptly interrupted. He He stumbles upon a sinister anomaly hidden in the base, which was not in his calculations. The unpredictable obstacle demands his immediate attention before he can proceed. After escaping Magneto's base, the Wasp completely loses control of the stolen alien ship. The vehicle's technology is incomprehensible to her, making a disaster inevitable. The violent impact destroys any chance of continued flight. Amidst the wreckage, Janet realizes that Magneto let her escape on purpose in a defective ship, turning her getaway into a trap. Luck cuts her a small break when a glitch in the dashboard reveals coordinates to an unknown structure. Out of options, Janet must trust the broken machine and seize this single chance to find shelter. Before continuing on foot, she obliterates what is left of the ship. Covering her tracks is a vital tactical decision to prevent Magneto or any other threat from tracking her crash site. Her solitary journey becomes a brutal test of endurance. Every meter she advances drains her energy, leaving her exhausted and vulnerable in an extremely hostile environment. Focused on her own exhaustion and frustrated by not finding shelter, she makes a lethal mistake and drops her guard. Without realizing it, Janet has just trespassed into enemy hunting grounds. The shock is immediate when the threat strikes. It's the Lizard, brought from Earth. The brutality of the attack forces Janet to burn her last bit of energy in a desperate flight for survival. Far away, Dr. Doom acts stealthily and hacks the technology of Galactus's fortress. He uses data from his armor and forces the alien console to decode a bizarre energy. The machinery takes that pure energy and materializes it into physical form. Doom surprises even himself by resurrecting Claw, bringing a ghost back into existence. But the villain soon realizes the scale of the problem. The process failed to bring the mind back intact, and Claw is now just a lunatic babbling uncontrollable echoes. Monitoring the exterior, Doom discovers that Galactus is distracted building a lethal machine. To take advantage of this small window of time, he concludes that he urgently needs to manufacture a distraction outside. Taking advantage of his companion's completely broken mental state, Doom finds his bait. He tasks the lunatic with the mission of passing his suicidal directives to the Earth villain's base. The delirious messenger's surprise invasion causes immediate confusion at the Earth villain's base. However, he brings an unquestionable trump card: Doom's absolute protocol codes. Ultron's programming recognizes the passwords and assumes the role of the messenger's relentless bodyguard. The threat of lethal cybernetic force cools tempers and forces the group to listen. Doom's distraction works. The cosmic entity senses the interference, halts the construction of his world Devourer, and begins tracking the source of the broken silence. Back on the surface, Janet's desperate fight takes a turn. She notices that the monster's attacks are flawed and realizes he is just terrified, acting out of pure defensive instinct. Her diplomatic tactic breaks through the villain's defenses. Understanding that the reptilian mind just wants peace, the two form an unlikely alliance and set off in search of shelter to treat their wounds. At the mutant camp, Professor Xavier pushes his limits operating in the shadows. His consciousness traverses the planet to spy on enemy base movements and map the territory. The intrusion is detected, and a mystical defense blocks access, expelling him violently, but the counterattack comes too late. Xavier comes too, knowing he has extracted the secrets he needed. With the stolen information, Xavier dispatches a team under Cyclops' command. The decision completely ignores that Storm is the current field leader, who doesn't take the disrespect lightly. The leader's patience reaches its limit, and she goes straight to the source for answers. Storm confronts Xavier aggressively, putting her foot down to remind him that field authority belongs to her. The situation escalates to a point of no return when Storm threatens to abandon the team. To prevent a mutiny, Xavier crosses a grave moral line and threatens to use his mental powers to force her and everyone else into obedience. Away from the political crisis, Colossus battles his own subconscious. Remorse hits hard as he desperately tries to erase the image of Zaji, the alien healer who saved him, from his mind. But when Zaji resumes his treatments, the mystical energy creates an intense connection. Her touch melts away all the mutant's emotional defenses, throwing his promises of loyalty in the trash. Before he can confess his feelings, the Human Torch appears out of nowhere. Johnny just acts, treating the alien girl like a trophy and leaving Colossus with no standing to intervene. The scoundrel tactic works perfectly. The Human Torch ignores his rival's dramatic confessions and capitalizes on the shock and adrenaline, securing a romance with the healer. Johnny steals the scene and takes the girl away, leaving the mutant behind. Colossus now has to swallow the frustration of losing ground to his rival's arrogance. The tension also reaches a boiling point among the Avengers. She-Hulk refuses to stomach the inaction, demanding the group abandon caution and solve the Wasp's disappearance with violence. The pressure of waiting makes the Hulk snap and demand an offensive. Captain America tries to maintain order, warning that wasting energy for nothing right now is signing their own death warrant. Amidst the structural crisis, Iron Man attempts an ill-timed, romantic approach. The Captain's clinical rejection comes with the suspicion that there's something very wrong with the armored hero's personality. The rejection triggers the breaking of his facade. Away from everyone, his confident posture crumbles as he suffers from debilitating pain, struggling to hide the stress that is destroying his health. Away from the friction, Dr. Doom's plan advances. The team of villains he assembled finally arrives at the crucial coordinates to establish the absolute defense perimeter. Cyclops' team arrives to intercept them, but the thirst for violence among some mutants breeds insubordination. Ignoring diplomacy, they launch a completely reckless charge. Amidst the disadvantage and chaos, Wolverine decides to nip the problem in the bud. He focuses on the most dangerous enemy target and strikes a lethal blow from the shadows. But the mutant leader refuses to cross the line of taking a life and sabotages his own ally. The strike is deflected at the last second, causing only a minor wound and immediately sparking Logan's fury. The villains flee in panic to save their bleeding team member. As the dust settles, internal tension explodes, and Logan makes it clear that the leadership's weak mindset will cost everyone their lives. With the field clear, the group is able to focus on the real reason for the ambush. Inspecting the area, they discover the colossal magnitude of a gigantic excavation project commissioned by Doom. Understanding the villains' machinations, the evacuation order is given as the mutants launch an attack to collapse the newly discovered structure in hopes of delaying the enemy. Back with the Wasp, the feeling of safety crumbles. Dr. Doom's squad pulls off a devastating ambush, ignoring the heroine with the true objective of forcibly recruiting the Lizard. The attempted extraction triggers a brutal retaliation from the Beast. Realizing their disadvantage in hand-to-hand combat, the squad resorts to stasis equipment, absolutely paralyzing the threat. With the threat contained, the team adopts the most pragmatic approach possible. They take the entire chunk of land as cargo, carrying the downed heroine as a bonus straight into enemy territory. Far away, the atmosphere at the heroes' camp borders on absolute despair as the cosmic machine advances. The clock is ticking too fast, eroding discipline and generating pleas for a purely suicidal attack. And while everyone debates the end of the world, fixated on the threat from above, they remain blind to their own backyard. A new piece enters the board, coldly studying the group's vulnerabilities without anyone noticing. The camp's calm is interrupted by a mysterious figure who adopts an already established heroic identity. She brings an entirely unknown presence to the group of heroes. It becomes clear that the cosmic being plucks civilians from their normal lives for this survival game. Tired of just being a forced spectator to the war, the newcomer has decided to seek an alliance. But the recruitment process is swallowed up by a lethal and ruthless enemy assault. The makeshift base quickly crumbles, forcing the heroes into a desperate defensive combat mode. The attackers didn't just come to destroy the haven. They came to make a calculated delivery. It's a sadistic display of superiority from Doom's squad, with a gift tossed in to break the heroes' morale. The grim reality hits the group in the worst possible way when they see their missing teammate. Their ally is discarded on the battlefield in horrific condition, crushing any relief of getting her back. The heroine's condition is so critical that it goes beyond any standard first aid. Their only hope now is to rush her to the local alien healer and pray for an immediate miracle. But the mystical intervention doesn't have the desired effect. The healer steps back, exhausted and defeated, delivering the grim verdict that there is nothing more to be done to stop her life from slipping away. Mourning quickly gives way to pure, unadulterated fury. The group instantly decides that the new directive is to hunt down every single one of Doom's henchmen and make them pay dearly for the murder. But Captain America pumps the brakes and reminds the team of the greater danger. If they go in blind with revenge and the world-devouring machine is activated, the entire planet and all the innocents will turn to dust. Far away, Professor Xavier establishes a different directive for the mutants. The order is clear and urgent. Change course and pursue the henchmen fleeing from the last battle. The hunt pays off, and the intersection team catches up to the enemy transport. The mutants' plan is to attack and shoot down the ship to isolate the henchmen before they can call for backup. The attack leaves no room for any kind of aerial defense. Without mercy, the mutants force the immediate crash of the vehicle, making the villains land brutally for ground combat. The mutants launch a coordinated offensive but realize their mistake when an attack of pure power is shrugged off. It becomes clear that the upgrades given by Dr. Doom have turned the villains into nearly unstoppable forces. The worst part falls to Xavier, who discovers that magic has sealed the adversary's minds. Stripped of his telepathy, the professor becomes useless in the attack, left only to act as an early warning radar. Despite the disadvantage and the chaos, their teamwork begins to bear fruit. The synchronized counterattack breaks the enemy offensive, proving that tactical coordination built over years still trumps brute strength. Sensing imminent defeat, Volcana decides to risk everything, pushing her fire powers to the absolute limit. She recklessly takes the front line to create a colossal distraction for her crew. The kamikaze tactic works, and Doom's henchmen manage to escape with their lives under heavy fire. The mutants' effort ensured their own survival, but letting the target slip away leaves a bitter taste of frustration. Meanwhile, in the bowels of the Divine Fortress, Dr. Doom makes a suicidal move. He has infiltrated the Devourer of Worlds territory in search of any technological advantage he can steal. Galactus, even while focused on preparing the planet for cosmic slaughter, possesses unfailing perception. He immediately senses the presence of an intruder snooping around inside his own home. To the cosmic entity, Doom is nothing more than an annoying parasite. Without any effort or ceremony, Galactus ejects the villain back to the surface as if he were mere space trash. At the villain's base, Enchantress reappears, offering magical salvation to the wounded, but she makes a point of collecting on the dark pact forged earlier, rubbing it in their faces that mystical favors come at a steep price. The sorceress reveals the cruel truth that Volcana's soul has already been completely consumed as payment. The tension among the group explodes at this manipulation, requiring physical restraint to prevent a suicidal attack against the Asgardian. In another corner, Creel deals with the agony of his severed arm, knowing that reverting to human form will be lethal. In an all-or-nothing gamble, he attempts to use the magic of his transformation to force the limb back into place. The suicidal gamble pays off, and his arm successfully reattaches in its stone form. However, the absolute physical toll of this regeneration leaves him on the brink of collapse, needing immediate rest. The henchman's rest is ruined by a brutal invasion that breaches the site's airtight security. Someone with colossal destructive power has just violated Doom's fortress from the outside in. She-Hulk appears, revealing the surgical motive behind the invasion. It's a revenge mission focused entirely on exacting payback for the Wasp's brutal murder committed by the opposing team. The attempted defense turns into total annihilation at the hands of the heroine. With the wrecking crew smashed to the ground, she directly challenges Doom's armored newcomer to step up and face the music. Refusing to be humiliated, Titania reacts brutally to show off the strength of her new powers. She-Hulk takes the hit and realizes too late that she severely underestimated her opponent's level. The situation goes from bad to catastrophic when the rest of the criminals join the brawl. They see the perfect chance to execute an Avenger and operate as a pack, showing absolutely no mercy. Completely overpowered and unable to react to the weight of the group's retaliation, the heroine falls. The criminals reach a lethal consensus and prepare to finish the job with a killing blow. Oblivious to the massacre in the hallways, Dr. Doom returns from his cosmic expulsion in a deplorable physical state. Enchantress confronts him immediately, desperate to know what their survival plan is now. The Grand Strategist's unwavering spirit breaks as he accepts his own failure, admitting that the devouring threat is insurmountable. All of the villain's grandiose ambitions die right there, leaving him with no fight left in him. Hundreds of miles away at the hero's camp, the mental strain of waiting worsens. Hawkeye interrupts Captain America to deliver the terrible news that She-Hulk has gone missing. Even knowing she's on a suicidal revenge mission, the leader's strategic decision remains unshaken. The captain denies the desperate rescue request, prioritizing the safety of the entire universe. Meanwhile, Colossus seeks out the alien healer in the funeral tent where the Wasp's body rests. But before he can get any treatment for his injuries, the woman suddenly collapses. Catching her, the mutant is shocked to find that her life energy has practically vanished. It's the critical result of an inexplicable sacrifice that has suddenly left her on the verge of death right then and there. To break the hero's tactical stalemate on the surface, Xavier establishes a mental link with the leader of the Avengers. The professor offers for his mutant team to fully take on the burden of monitoring the Devourer's cosmic threat. With global security temporarily in the hands of the mutants, the Avengers' passive observation protocol is scrapped, the tactical burden lifts, and the team finally receives the official authorization they they needed for the rescue. The authorization converts all of the group's pent-up frustration into a pure thirst for retaliation. What was supposed to be a rescue operation turns into an all-out hunt, with the heroes ready to make their enemies pay for everything. The rescue mission for She-Hulk and the revenge for the Wasp finally get off the ground. The heroes leave all hesitation behind and launch a frontal assault on the enemy fortress. It's payback time, and there's no more room for retreat. Any plan for a stealth invasion is thrown out the window. Driven by grief, they announce their arrival in the most destructive way possible, crossing the point of no return against Dr. Doom's forces. While the base is under attack, Enchantress's true colors are revealed. The war never mattered to her. Her whole plan was to use the threat of annihilation to break Thor's righteousness and force him to seek comfort in her. But realizing that the God of Thunder didn't fall for her tricks shatters the villain's ego. Her illusion of superiority crumbles, marking rock bottom for someone who spent her life putting herself above any consequences. In the medical wing, priorities are different. The damage the heroes did to Molecule Man left deep scars on Volcana's devotion. The war outside doesn't matter anymore. The only thing that matters now is ensuring his survival. Far from there, cowardice runs rampant among the henchmen. Taking advantage of the battlefield turning its back, one of the villains makes the brutal decision to execute the already downed threat once and for all. The reason for such heavy security in the fortress is revealed. The Grand Master of Cosmic Chess is physically broken. Doom is operating at his body's absolute limit to salvage the final phase of his plan. Absorbing the energy of a cosmic entity is taking a brutal toll. He is in indescribable agony, but his pride speaks louder, and he refuses to stop before achieving his goal. The invasion front advances quickly, but the idea of going all out proves to be a fatal mistake. Doom's henchmen were already on standby waiting for the attack, shattering the hero's tactical advantage in a perfect ambush. In the midst of this deadly combat, the worst-case scenario happens. The unstable environment triggers a catastrophic loss of power, leaving one of the team's heavyweights as an ordinary man at the mercy of a sadistic enemy. But the new Spider-Woman decides to enter the fight for real. She charges in full force, shifting the focus of the battle and taking the pressure off her allies who were at a massive disadvantage. Using the base's own structure to her advantage, the heroine unloads on the threat without mercy. It's proof that her survival instincts are sharp enough to go toe-to-toe with the enemy's giants. In another corridor, Clint tries to prevent a bloodbath. He knows the damage his special weaponry can cause and gives Piledriver a clear warning to back off while he still can. Since the warning is ignored out of sheer arrogance, the hero makes the tough call. Without further hesitation, he unleashes a shot of surgical precision to prove the hard way that arrogance doesn't beat tactics. The invasion continues, and Hulk is the first to reach Enchantress's chambers. Instead of trying to flee from the raging behemoth, she spots an opportunity and decides to play with her opponent's mind. The mental manipulation reaches its peak. The hero's uncontrollable rage is wiped away and replaced by an artificial devotion. Without landing a single physical blow, she neutralizes the squad's most destructive member. But Captain America arrives right behind him. He senses the trap upon seeing his fallen teammate, realizing that the danger here isn't brute force, but psychological warfare. Enchantress tries the same trick on him, but the spell hits a brick wall. The soldier's mental discipline and unwavering moral compass create an absolute block against her manipulative magic. With no time for chivalry, the leader abruptly ends the confrontation, and the Asgardian goddess finally falls. With the magical threat neutralized, the squad gets a real chance to focus on their primary objective. While the leadership pushes forward, Titania sets a lethal trap in the upper structure of the fortress. She sees the perfect chance to use her immense strength and crush all the invading resistance down below at once. But the spider sense saves the day. The hero intercepts the trap at the exact point of no return, ruining her stealthy plan and forcing the villain to face him in a direct confrontation she didn't want. Sizing up his opponent during the fight, Spider-Man makes a flawless read. He realizes that all that power is nothing but a coping mechanism to mask a deeply traumatized person's profound inferiority complex. The chaos of the invasion separates the team. Completely isolated, Hawkeye and a powerless ally end up falling into the containment wing, right into the territory of an opponent made of pure, unstable energy. Death seems certain. Back in the medical wing, the power dynamic has completely inverted. The most dangerous being in the universe is bedridden, and Volcana takes control with a protective instinct so fierce it establishes a perimeter of death. The hero's vanguard breaches the sector expecting standard resistance and runs face-first into thermal retaliation. The strike force is incinerated the exact millisecond they cross the defense line. To make matters worse, a near-death Molecule Man uses the rest of his energy to create an impenetrable barrier. The invader's brute force has no effect against a physically perfect blockade, but science turns the tables. Exploiting the one flaw that the field can't stop light, Captain Marvel sheds her physical form and bypasses the absolute security to attack the source directly. The shock worsens the villain's injuries and he simply passes out, collapsing the barrier. Desperate to save her love, Volcana surrenders unconditionally. The heroes conquer the area, but with a bitter moral aftertaste. On the catwalks, Spider-Man delivers the mental coup de grace to Titania. He exposes the insecurities she hates the most, revealing the scared girl beneath the muscles and breaking the villain's fighting spirit. The strategic victory is perfect. Completely overwhelmed by her own failure after being thrown away, the villain breaks down, neutralized without shedding a single drop of blood, purely by the weight of her own mind. The main invasion finally reaches the doorstep of danger. Clashing with Dr. Doom's personal killing machine is the confirmation. The heart of the base and the enemy leader are right in the next room. The armor easily turns the tide against their brute force attacks. The captain makes a bitter decision and orders the use of the most lethal energy tactic in their arsenal, taking a practically suicidal risk in the corridor. The absurd overload melts the machine's internal circuits. With the team pushed to the brink of exhaustion from the explosion, it's up to the leader to bear the burden of pressing on alone for the long-awaited reckoning. But the climax never comes. The sick obsession with power has taken an irreversible toll, reducing the grand architect of this nightmare to a catatonic, harmless state. A total subversion of expectations. With the base under control, the heroes turn the fortress into an improvised medical wing. Reed takes control of the alien technology to try and reverse the fatalities left by the brutal combat. Far from there, the consequences of war take their toll. The alien healer who had been helping them goes into total collapse after transferring her own life energy so many times. Her body has reached the point of no return. Desperate for answers, Colossus activates native telepathic technology to understand what happened. The mental barriers melt away, fusing their memories in a clash of pure information. The truth is revealed. He experiences the moment the alien depleted her essence to pull Wasp from a lethal stasis. The weight of this selfless sacrifice leaves the mutant completely devastated. While one side deals with death, the other witnesses a miracle. The heroine presumed dead regains consciousness with absurd naturalness, fully restored and totally oblivious to the cosmic price it cost. Miles away, the mutant team observes the Devourer of Worlds. The atmosphere is heavy, and Magneto raises the dangerous theory that the colossal structure built by the villain might just be a distraction. Cyclops demands focus on the monitoring, and at that exact moment, the data shows a sudden change, completely shattering the false sense of control the team had over the cosmic threat. Back at the base, Peter Parker discovers a machine that materializes clothes by decoding thoughts. For someone with his uniform in tatters, he sees this as the ultimate prize and rushes to test it. Without understanding the complex interface, he chooses a terminal on pure instinct in a blind leap of faith. Peter has no idea that this little aesthetic vanity has triggered an irreversible mistake. The machine doesn't dispense standard fabric. The alien material acts on its own and creeps up the hero's body with a speed that prevents any chance of reaction. The new black suit integrates perfectly with him. Believing it was just a mental design read by the contraption, Peter is satisfied, never imagining that he has just bonded with a living organism. But the distraction is short-lived. A violent tremor confirms that the end of the world has begun, and the cosmic entity has started the process of devouring the entire planet. The hero's time has simply run out. The destruction of Battleworld finally begins. As the heroes receive a telepathic warning about the imminent end, Colossus discovers that the process of devouring the planet has been initiated. With his mind at peace, he makes a final decision. The mutant of steel will march into a suicide mission just to ensure that the woman he loves, now in a coma, has a chance to wake up. Meanwhile, the mutant's final offensive takes shape. Storm takes the vanguard of the attack, setting off to try to destabilize the annihilation process from the air, but the entity brushes off the attack like flies. Realizing the abysmal difference in power, Professor Xavier adopts a ruthless stance and takes absolute tactical control of the team via telepathy. After a risky sacrifice creates the perfect opening, the crazy gamble pays off. The team coordinates a full-force attack without hesitation to obliterate the alien technology once and for all. The impact of the offensive triggers a detonation of catastrophic proportions. The massive shockwave reverberates for miles, changing the weather and making it clear that something terrible has happened on the front lines. Inside the dropship carrying the reinforcements, the psychological weight shatters the team's morale. The silence and despondency highlight the fear that this might be the last ride of their lives. Bruce Banner is trapped in a frustrating limbo. His consciousness blocks the Hulk's rage, but his intellect is also fading, leaving him unable to use either brute strength or his tactical mind. Nearby, Ben Grimm's despair breaks his physical barrier. Driven by indignation and the need to protect his own, the mind that kept him trapped in human form begins to give way. His biology finally obeys, and the Thing resurfaces. All that crushing weight of uselessness vanishes the moment he realizes his destructive power has come back to the surface. In another corner, Peter Parker explains the profound relief of having a new dark suit. The big discovery is that this technology requires no physical triggers, obeying his thoughts instantly. Oblivious to the chaos, Reed Richards' genius mind racks itself trying to understand the logic of the omnipotent being that abducted them. He concludes that the Devourer of Worlds is the true key to this cosmic enigma. But before he can finish his thought, the dropship loses its systems, and gravity goes out the window. With no control over their trajectory, the group braces for the imminent violent crash. Upon hitting the ground, the sheer scale of the disaster is laid bare. The enemy's monumental machinery has already begun to drain the planet's energy, and the doomsday clock is ticking. Facing the machine, Reed Richards gives an order bordering on insanity. They must fall back. The leader concludes that the salvation of the entire universe depends on letting the Devourer of Worlds win and consume the planet. His cosmic math is terrifying. The theory is that if the entity wins, the ultimate prize will either cure its eternal hunger or spark a lethal war against whoever abducted them. But no sooner is the decision sealed than the consequences come knocking. In the blink of an eye, the architect of this suicidal plan is summarily abducted, leaving the team without their greatest strategist. In space, the devouring force does not treat the abducted scientist like an insect, but as a worthy guest. A bizarre truce is formed, accompanied by an offer to access his deepest desires. The mental projection strikes right at the leader's greatest weakness, his family. The anguish of missing moments of his pregnant wife's life almost breaks the hero's impeccable composure. Far from there, Dr. Doom, abandoned in a maximum security prison, has an epiphany. Instead of accepting defeat, he uses his lethal mind and deciphers the logic of the entity's cosmic power. The prison restraints turn to dust in seconds. The supreme threat not only regains his lethality, but is now loose and armed in the heart of the universe's most advanced technology. Doom's dark objective is to use the maddened claw as pure raw material. He plans to drain and use his lackey's vibratory signature as an access key to cosmic power. Back on the devastated land, Colossus's suicide search yields results. A familiar impact shatters the rocks from the inside out, revealing that the previous detonation did not exterminate the team. At the main camp, a miracle happens amidst the tension. Zaji, the native healer who had drained her own life force to save the heroes, finally regains consciousness. But to Colossus's despair, she walks right past him and focuses all her attention on the Human Torch, except Johnny coldly ignores her, leaving the mutant of steel with a broken heart. The atmosphere of conflict is interrupted when Mr. Fantastic returns out of nowhere. Instead of reporting torture, he acts with a bizarre calmness after the encounter, which no one there can swallow. Reed admits that the revelation jammed his moral compass. He is caught in a terrifying paradox, unsure whether to fight for life on the planet now or let the giant maintain universal balance. Out of patience for ethical paralysis, Captain America steps up. He doesn't force anyone, but he sets the final decision in stone. He's going to war to stop the annihilation. The order now is to march toward what looks like a certain slaughter. Rivals and old threats unite under the same banner to face the imminent end. But the enemy's retaliation on the battlefield is absolutely disproportionate. It becomes clear that drawing the attention of a being of this magnitude is a violent reminder of all of their insignificance. The realization sets in. Clashing head-on with the giant is useless. The strategy shifts to a surgical strike, aiming straight at the infrastructure of the machinery consuming the planet. The fate of the entire universe is no longer Reed's priority. The selfish and intensely human motivation of going back home and watching his own family grow breaks any hesitation the scientist had. With a new opening created, the team focuses all their firepower on the main equipment. They destroy the immense structure, certain that they are securing the final victory. But Reed panics and realizes the strategy's fatal flaw. The true target wasn't the equipment, but the Devourer himself, who is now fleeing, and letting him escape escape is going to cost them dearly. The retreat was never out of weakness, but a repositioning. Back in its main domain in space, the entity prepares to act without any kind of earthly restrictions. To ensure the necessary power, the entity takes a drastic measure. It decides to drain its own cosmic home first. The plan is to accumulate energy by absorbing absolutely everything around it. The Devourer of Worlds begins the process of absolute consumption, pulling all vital essence into himself. It is the climax of the crisis, and the hero's defeat seems definitive in the face of extinction. But this end of everything is the perfect trigger Dr. Doom had been waiting for. He calculates the exact moment the deity lowers its guard due to its total focus on massive absorption. Using his lackey's essence as a filter, Doom hacks the process and reroutes that infinite flow of power. The villain steals absolute godhood right from under the entity's nose, executing his masterstroke. The heroes realize that Galactus hasn't fled, but rather retreated to devour his own worldship. Once he finishes, his target will be the planet they're on. Despair takes over in the face of this death sentence. Galactus prepares to absorb the colossal energy and regain his omnipotence. But suddenly, his control fails. The energy meant to feed him is forcefully drained by an unknown source. The trail of this stolen energy leads directly to the enemy base where Dr. Doom was locked up. The group realizes the prison didn't hold him. The universal threat has just changed faces. Captain Marvel breaches the fortress in the blink of an eye to investigate. She maps the epicenter of the cosmic theft as the facility seems on the verge of collapsing. The recon confirms the worst possible scenario. Doom has built an insane machine to drain the anomaly directly into himself. He is forcing his own evolution to become a god, and Victor Von Doom's gamble pays off. The transfer is complete, and he usurps the raw energy. The villain has just solidified himself as a true deity, but the power brings an immediate existential risk. Doom's subconscious now dictates the laws of physics, and any whim can rewrite matter. If he doesn't tame his own mind, his imagination will destroy reality. With a monumental effort, he locks down this barrier and stabilizes his power. The limitations of human perception vanish completely. His consciousness stretches to embrace the very fabric of the universe. In this state of hyperconsciousness, the concept of hiding ceases to exist. Captain Marvel's disguise is useless against someone omniscient. The intruder is tracked instantly. The mental counterattack is brutal, severing the heroine's telepathic connection with the Avengers. The rescue team is left flying blind, knowing their scout is alone against an omnipotent tyrant. To make matters worse, the hero's ship is completely dead and out of power, but Magneto refuses to accept defeat. Using his powers, he decides to become the vessel's own engine. The improvisation proves terrifyingly efficient. The magnetic propulsion forces the heavy hull to tear through the air at breakneck speeds to resume the rescue mission. Meanwhile, Victor Von Doom faces an internal dilemma. With cosmic power in his veins, his old grudge against the heroes has lost its meaning. Limitless, his ambition hits a dangerous new ceiling. With no rivals left to match him, he decides the only worthy target is the very entity that created this game, the Beyonder. The madness is so great that the system's echoes try to warn him it's suicide. But Doom ignores the warnings and puts his engineering to work. Using stolen technology, he turns his suit into a universal energy siphon, calibrated to drain the creator. The only obstacle is proximity, requiring Victor to get close enough to touch the entity. Accepting the risk of total annihilation, he sets off toward the center of absolute power. Far away, the hero coalition finally storms the fortress in full force, but they hit a dead end. With their main target gone, the priority shifts to finding the allies left behind. In the main room, Reed Richards puts the pieces together and understands Victor's macabre genius. What remains there wasn't an accident, but raw material harvested by force. Claw's severed head reveals the truth. Doom didn't flee. He went to the origin of it all to steal the Beyonder's own power. The information hits the group like a punch to the gut. The impact of this divine clash tears through space-time, and the consequences hit the heroes. The fortress begins to crumble as if made of paper, forcing the group to deal with the chaos. Knowing they can't stop an omnipotent Doom, Reed proposes the unthinkable, locating and reviving Galactus. The former Devourer of Worlds becomes their only and desperate chance of defense. But things spiral out of control fast, and the structure finally gives way. Reed sacrifices his own safety, throwing himself into the line of fire to absorb the impact and save the team. As the dust settles, reality knocks at the door. The destruction isn't just at the base. The entire planet is falling apart under the force of the cosmic clash. Over in the Beyonder's realm, Victor's assault begins to fail. The gap between him and the entity is massive, and the enemy force proves to be an impenetrable wall. The supreme entity shows no anger, only an analytical curiosity. It's the posture of a god examining the remains of an insect that had the audacity to try and sting him. The cosmic invader delves into Victor's essence, exposing his tragic history. The loss of innocence and the guilt molded the relentless machine that is now being crushed. Intrigued by human desire, the cosmic force begins a brutal dissection of the villain's essence. The sadistic study of every fragment brings an agony that shatters any mortal limit. Anyone else would beg for death, but Victor's mind operates on pure arrogance. He actively rejects relief. Giving up does not exist in the vocabulary of one who considers himself a god. Meanwhile, on the dying planet, the hero's shelter turns into a tomb, but Captain America makes a critical decision, refusing immediate escape to pay a moral debt. Ignoring the apocalypse, Steve rushes to save the enemies locked in the cells. Time is short, but Logan swallows his pride and decides to get his hands dirty on this mission of mercy. The rescue is successful, but the relief of making it outside is short-lived. The planet is tearing itself apart, leaving nowhere to run. Until, out of nowhere, the planetary unraveling stops. An unnatural silence takes over, making it clear that an outside force has changed the rules of the game. The energetic chaos in the skies begins to come into focus. Someone is bending the universe to force their own rebirth on the physical plane. The suspense is suffocating. The victor of the divine duel reveals himself. Victor Von Doom has survived, usurped everything, and claimed the position of the universe's omnipotent god. All the hero's efforts seem pointless, but instead of attacking, Doom simply decrees the end of the conflict. He claims the Beyonder has been erased, and his old motivations are gone. The villain-turned-god declares absolute peace, leaving the heroes stunned in the face of this bizarre new reality. Dr. Doom reaches the pinnacle of his existence. With the energy of the universe pulsing through his veins, resentment and old rivalries completely lose their meaning. He makes a point of making it clear that the ultimate threat is gone for good. Now he has transcended any need for petty destruction. He is a god, and gods have nothing to prove to mortals. For the new god, the conversation is over. Humanity and its protectors are nothing but cosmic dust in the new scope of his ambitions. He turns his back on his greatest enemies without an ounce of concern. The rivalry has ended out of sheer abandonment, and he leaves to deal with universal matters. Far away, emotional manipulation reaches its breaking point among the villains. Blind trust turns into pure fury at the abandonment of their former leader. And when the person with the most destructive potential on the team decides to take the betrayal personally, the tables turn. The retaliation is of an apocalyptic scale. All of Molecule Man's repressed power explodes at once, shaping the environment into a weapon aimed at the sky. It's the suicide attack of a man with wounded pride. He picks a direct, brutal fight against the most powerful being in existence. But instead of fighting back, Doom forcefully expands Owen's mind. He shares his cosmic perspective, exposing the secrets of the universe like a disturbing gift. The revelation is heavy. Owen discovers that his raw power puts him at the top of reality's food chain, and the truth finally clicks. By accepting his true nature, Owen transcends. The limits were always a lie created by his own subconscious. Total mastery over any kind of matter is unlocked, completely changing the game for him. Driven by newfound confidence, Owen takes official command of the villains. The veiled threat of his new power level convinces the opposition to swallow their pride and accept the hierarchy. His first order shows that the priority is not conquest, but simply ensuring the team's immediate survival. With Molecule Man embracing his full powers, the faction decides this war is over. Owen creates a transport out of thin air, ready to take his group far away from the whole conflict. He has discarded his rivalry with the heroes and now just wants to shape his own destiny. Meanwhile, a harsh reality sinks in for the heroes. It becomes clear that Doom has won, eliminating the supreme entity and usurping its place. The weight of this reality crushes any optimism. They have confirmation that they are no longer dealing with an armored megalomaniac, but with a literally omnipotent being. The villain's plan is executed in terrifying fashion. Owen doesn't just open an escape portal, he completely isolates the city and tears the entire landmass off the surface. The faction declares the end of the war, taking the arena itself with them as they retreat in an exodus through outer space. Far away, the heroes notice the gravitational shift and the mood grows tense. The group's brains quickly connect the dots to Molecule Man's newly awakened strength. The harsh realization hits. Their only physical connection to Earth is leaving, stranding them completely. During the night, an energy anomaly crashes into the heroes' base. The impact is devastating in the quarters of the team's biggest ticking time bomb. Before Bruce Banner can wake up, the mysterious force invades his body and hijacks his mind all at once. Hulk charges through the corridors like a tank, completely ignoring all attempts at contact. Banner's consciousness is no longer in control of his actions. He has become a lethal threat operating in a deep trance. Spider-Woman decides to act against their advancing ally. Using her full potential, she conjures a massive psionic barrier, sealing the corridor. It's a desperate gambit to hold back the mindless monster, starting a tense countdown to see how long the defense holds. The brutal clash destroys Julia's defenses, leaving her completely vulnerable. With no time to react, the heroine's mind is bombarded and subjugated by the same unknown force. The anomaly finds a new opportunity and possesses her. The possession cycle is complete. With a new host secured, the Green Giant's worn-out body is discarded and returns to rest. Meanwhile, Julia's consciousness is shut down, and her body rises like a puppet driven by the parasite's agenda. The mental invasion culminates in a specific objective deep within the bowels of the complex. The anomaly seeks the only sonic energy source still preserved in the rubble, a forgotten piece on the board, now about to be reactivated by the heroine's controlled body. Contact with the sonic source triggers an instantaneous reaction. The entity gets exactly what it wanted. A wave of pure energy swallows everything around it in a fraction of a second, marking the climax of this stealthy invasion. The echo tears through the silence, forcing the heroes into a brutal awakening. They soon realize the ultimate enemy paid a silent visit while they slept. The new god's contempt demands that his authority be felt, leaving an armed direct provocation for the survivors. The holographic ultimatum is indisputable and arrogant. The sovereign orders his enemies to appear in his domain within a set deadline. It's a sadistic mind game meant to remind each of them who dictates the laws of reality now. The colossal monument raised from nothing is the indisputable proof of his godhood. Behind the scenes of this absolute dominion, the essence of the new god demands a surreal sacrifice. By his side, the fractured mind of a resurrected lackey reveals the cracks of dealing with the very top of existence. Far from the cosmic chaos, the knight's consequences show themselves in another corner. Colossus had abandoned his post and his team for a very intimate reason. He crossed the planet to seek refuge exactly in the place the group had left behind. The mystery of his desertion reveals itself as a blind escape from reality. Overcome by the fear of being slaughtered in the final battle, the hero threw his duty in the trash. He abandoned his loyalty to the team to try and validate an irrational obsession with an inhabitant of that world. The revelation of his whereabouts destroys the internal trust of the hero team, but the realization is far more cruel. Colossus's uncontrollable affection is just a chemical dependency, an emotional addiction generated by alien healings. The heroes are now going to war short-handed because of a biological illusion. With no time to rescue their ally, the suicide journey reaches Doom's domain. They are voluntarily walking into the jaws of the enemy. The reception awaiting them confirms that every step was anticipated. They are merely sheep presenting themselves for slaughter. But Doom doesn't seek annihilation, choosing to use his omnipotence to wipe his slate clean. It's a bizarre attempt at redemption to close his mortal cycle. He wants to fix the petty mistakes he made over the past few days to stroke his divine ego. As a final gesture, the Sovereign offers a blank check. Doom promises to grant any wish they desire on the spot. It's an offer they can't refuse to make up for the suffering caused, leaving the entire team suspicious. True to his principles, Steve Rogers refuses the divine handout. They won't accept favors from an omnipotent tyrant. Doom ends the audience and lays down his law. They are free to go, but if they cross his path again, indifference will give way to total annihilation. The group evacuates and breathes a sigh of relief at surviving the impossible, but a quick head count reveals a disaster. Spider-Woman didn't make it out with them. The new god's oppressive aura blocks all tracking, leaving them blind as they realize she broke the ultimatum. Logic dictates running away, but leadership demands sacrifices. Ignoring the certainty of being massacred, Steve Rogers makes a suicidal decision. He crosses the forbidden line and returns alone to the lion's den in search of his missing ally. The subversion of expectations upon invading the chambers is brutal. The being capable of shaping reality is simply relaxing, completely vulnerable and nostalgic. The greatest danger in the universe acts with the banality of an ordinary man surrounded by memories of his past. In the most isolated wings, Spider-Woman emerges from the shadows taking the offensive. She reveals that her disappearance was a flawless ambush against Doom's lackey. She turns the tables, determined to take down whoever it takes to clear her way back home. The shock of the ambush forces the heroine's mind into a complete shutdown from exhaustion. On the flip side, this acts as a reset button for her pursuer. The alien entity operating him is suppressed, returning his free will, even with his sanity hanging by a thread. Facing doom, Rogers understands the true extent of their enemy's transformation. Omnipotence wasn't sought for conquest, but to free his own mother's soul. The villain has lost interest in mortal disputes. The entire universe has become too small now. The heroine's extraction is complete, and the makeshift base breathes a sigh of relief at her safe awakening. But Xavier reads Rogers' emotions the moment he returns. It becomes clear that the revelations brought by the captain don't carry hope, but rather a grim verdict. The team needs full strength for the coming war. Xavier's telepathic intrusion tears through the deserter's mind on the other side of the planet, bringing back the weight of his responsibilities. Colossus is forced to face the crisis he tried to negligently abandon. The mandatory summons shatters the illusion of peace, and he understands he needs to return to base. But before leaving on what he knows is a suicide mission, he makes an oath. He promises to survive and return to secure a future by her side. The leaders of the resistance gather in a tense council of war. The alliance is divided over the dilemma of attacking a god whose current goal seems harmless and human. Half the room questions whether they should interfere with this passive deity. Captain America brings up the real threat. He argues that a gilded cage is still a cage, and that momentary benevolence is a trap. The dictator's arrogance and vanity remain in control of his divine actions, forming an unsustainable cosmic dictatorship. Courage is contagious, and resolve sweeps the room. The team buys into the idea and forms a united front against the creator of this world. Disgust for absolute tyranny overcomes the logical terror of annihilation, and the pact of war is sealed. Swallowing his own happiness and fearing the loss of his alien romance, the Russian makes the most bitter choice of his life. His sense of heroic sacrifice speaks louder than selfishness. The internal conflict ends, and he accepts to march with the team to the final battle. Except the price of rebellion is exacted in the very same split second. Before they can formulate any plan of attack, divine fury crashes down upon them without mercy. The warning of instantaneous annihilation violently comes true, punishing the mutiny and ending the game right there. Dr. Doom's retaliation is absolute. With terrifying ease, the new god wipes the resistance off the face of the planet. Earth's legends are reduced to absolutely nothing. The last refuge becomes the group's definitive tomb. The plan they knew was suicidal lived up to its name, and the universe loses its greatest defenders in the blink of an eye. For the alien healer Zaji, the loss is crushing. She is hit by the realization that her life-giving gifts are useless against disintegration. Colossus has simply ceased to exist. Dealing with omnipotence brings a terrifying responsibility. To protect reality from accidental erasure, Doom chooses to suppress the limitless cosmic energy he conquered within himself. With infinite power locked away, Doom finally lowers his guard. He believes the threat is over, and that his victory over the heroes is absolute. Meanwhile, ignoring Doom's cosmic ambitions, Molecule Man takes drastic action. He decides to abandon Battleworld to return home. Far away, Enchantress summons a mystical entity. She forces an elemental spirit to manifest in order to steal the secrets of creation. The elemental reveals that the Beyonder, the creator of all this, was a force corrupted by desire. He started this insane experiment using the superpowered beings as lab rats, but Doom refused to be a pawn on the board. Instead of joining the feudal war, he bypassed the system and stole the creator's own power. The forced telepathic invasion by Enchantress reveals Doom's intentions. Now in absolute control, the villain is already plotting to invade Mephisto's hell. His ambition knows no bounds. One last question from the goddess changes everything. The elemental reveals that the Beyonder's cosmic force survived and is hiding inside Doom himself, just waiting to strike. On the villain's escape ship, confinement takes its toll. The lizard's savage side dominates his mind, awakening an irrepressible hatred that threatens the already fragile alliance. The chaos attracts Molecule Man. To everyone's surprise, Owen Reese reappears with terrifying confidence, claiming to have fully mastered his limitless potential. But before he can display his cosmic godhood, the mind of his beloved Volcana is invaded. Her consciousness is suppressed, and her body obeys an irresistible magical call. It was the goddess Enchantress who pulled her. She chooses to use her debtor's life force as fuel to cross dimensions and escape Doom's wrath. Unaware of the disappearance, Reese deals with Dr. Octopus. Unable to accept his own insignificance before a man who breaks the laws of the cosmos, the scientist resorts to violence and attacks. The power gap is an incalculable abyss. Reese neutralizes Earth's genius, turning the lethal attack into utter humiliation. His divine facade drops when he realizes his beloved was taken. The lizard's primal instinct offers the only hope of tracking the trail of Asgardian magic. The tracking works perfectly. The duo invades the ritual site and breaks Enchantress's concentration, interrupting the execution by a hair's breadth. During the escape, the lizard's ferocity tears through the teleportation barrier. The two plummet through space-time right onto the outskirts of Dr. Doom's fortress. Cornered, Enchantress crushes the monster against the ground with magic. She ensures her survival, but is now completely exposed in the domain of the most dangerous being in the universe. To heal herself, she extracts the creature's life force until it is completely consumed. Feeling cornered, she bets on a desperate dimensional escape into the void of space. At the main base, the most powerful being in the universe yields to exhaustion and falls asleep. Claw realizes that a sleeping god is, in fact, a very easy target. Instead of attacking, he plants the seed of doubt. Claw warns Doom of the danger that his own subconscious might bring the massacred heroes back to life in a mere nightmare. The new god takes the bait. Claw uses his abilities to project images of recent events, forcing Doom to hunt for weaknesses in his plan. The narrative focuses on Zaji. She gives every drop of her own essence to reverse Colossus's death, paying for the miracle with her own life. Driven by grief and duty, Colossus revives the group's most brilliant mind. Reed Richards awakens and instantly understands that the burden of reversing the apocalypse has fallen into his lap. Claw's illusion hits its mark. With Reed operating the alien machines, Doom now holds the subconscious conviction that the army is rising again to settle the score. Paranoia crushes Doom. He understands that, with the absolute power he wields, the simple act of focusing on doubt and imagining the hero's return can rewrite reality. And then the impossible violently knocks on the door. The undeniable proof that his divine reign has failed appears as the heroes invade the fortress. His mind can't handle the pressure, and the universe begins to tear itself apart. Desperate not to lose his sanity, Doom transfers a drop of his omnipotence to Claw to eliminate the resistance. Confident that the villain was weak, the front line advances, but their survival instinct soon warns them that they will face an unprecedented lethal force. The corrupted cosmic energy has turned Claw into a creator of real matter. He assembles his own army of nightmares to block the path. To ensure the job gets done, Ultron is recreated. The robot is promoted to General of the Defense Line with the mission of wiping the resistance off the map. The battlefield takes its toll, and the alien environment deactivates the thing's powers. His tremendous strength disappears, leaving him exposed and human in the face of death. His deep refusal to be useless triggers the reversal of the mutation. He regains his power, forced by his mind, and turns the tide of the fight. The Jade Giant focuses his fury into a direct attack on Ultron. The machine strikes back ruthlessly, proving that brute force won't solve the problem. The lethal threat collapses on its own. Capitalizing on a structural flaw, Wasp performs brilliant internal sabotage and destroys the robot. With unwavering focus, the Resistance breaks the final line of defense by force. The path to their true target finally opens. Captain America invades Doom's chambers. But instead of panic, he finds cold, divine indifference to a mortal's intrusion. Cosmic patience evaporates at the hero's accusations of cowardice. The verdict is immediate, and the ultimate symbol of the Resistance is wiped from existence once again. But Omnipotence stumbles on its own doubt. Doom's fractured mind obeys his deepest fear, materializing the return of the man he cannot keep dead. Without hesitation, Rogers closes the distance and strikes his opponent. The blow definitively proves that the Sovereign has lost control over his own mind and power. The instability reaches catastrophic proportions. With Doom's mind giving way, the foundation of the entire multiverse begins to unravel in a wave of annihilation. Claw's manipulation reaches its peak. Taking advantage of the collapse, the lackey takes the reins of the board, revealing that the greatest threat was acting in the shadows all along. The true entity decides to act. The Beyonder abandons the lackey's body and resurfaces as pure force, ready to take back what was stolen from him. The extraction is brutal and relentless. The cosmic being invades his former usurper and reclaims his own godhood, tearing the burden from the back of a defenseless Doom. Reality is instantly rewritten, and the status quo returns. The Beyonder returns the villain to his old prison of scars and metal as punishment. The cosmic storm disappears for good, taking both the usurper and the deity with it. The infinite clash ends, and the relief of survival fills the void left behind. Outside, the team regroups in exhaustion. Unaware of the miracles behind the scenes, their focus shifts purely to finding a way home. But the emotional scars are unbearable. Colossus remains anchored to the pain, crushed by the reality that he only breathes because the woman he loved gave her life for him. Chasing a spark of normalcy, Peter Parker experiences the comfort of his new alien suit. The outfit surprises him by anticipating and immediately adapting to his thoughts. The marvel soon turns to suspicion. Peter notices that the clothes generated by his friends don't react this way, and deduces he has brought a dangerous anomaly entirely with him. Bruce Banner's biology breaks down, and his radiation spikes uncontrollably. The Hulk's irrational irritability becomes a ticking time bomb, forcing his friends to prepare for the worst. An unexpected power shift occurs. Kurt Connors appears without any trace of the lizard. The base itself miraculously began answering his desires. Mr. Fantastic unravels the mystery. The divine energy left by the battle permeated the entire planet, turning any deep desire into a real fact. Captain America isolates himself to test the limit of this anomaly. Using pure focused determination, he bends the laws of physics and restores his shattered shield. The rescue begins, and Battleworld is left behind. The mutants are the first to use the teleportation technology back to Earth, but the escape triggers a drastic change in the teams. She-Hulk departs and assumes an official post to fill a critical absence in the Fantastic Four. Ben Grimm cancels his ticket. He realizes that on the alien planet, he has total control over his own rocky structure and demands this eternal autonomy, free from his curse. Reed Richards swallows hard and accepts his best friend's choice. Forcing him to return to a life of pain would be the true betrayal, sealing the dissolution of the original group. But the scientist keeps a terrible burden in silence. He hides the discovery that the transformation was always strictly psychological to spare his friend's sanity. Alone and far from the society that saw him as a freak, the rock giant finds courage. The only inhabitant of this shattered world embraces the void to rewrite his own story.